All right, good afternoon. It's March 24th, 2018. Today joined by Unno-san, Takahashi-san, and we are going to discuss the role of new technology in the future of Japan. We have, in previous session, we have been looking at basically the situation where Japan is in a demographic situation where we have a rapidly aging society. We need to basically make sure that the younger generation will be able to support the elder generation, and in order to do that, we need to be actually grow our GDP per head, our output per working person, in order to support a growing number of elderly people. Well, what that means is that there is a kind of a doom scenario, but looking at the forecast, we actually see that it's forecasted that GDP will remain more or less stable. And the reason for that being that the technology will enable young people to produce more than they do today, be more productive. Technology like we have been looking at last week, artificial intelligence, the Internet of Things, self-driving vehicles, biotechnology, you name it. There are lots of technologies out there that look very promising, and they looking at the past and industrial revolutions and income changes, then we can be hopeful that these technologies will actually grow the GDP per head, and that will make sure that Japan doesn't need to worry too much about the future. So today we will look at have a quick look at the past, see what was the impact of the Industrial Revolution, the first Industrial Revolution, the second Industrial Revolution, what effect did it have on income distribution, and then looking at so what exactly will the future look like? And I think it will be a very, very interesting discussion. So without further ado, let's get started. Make this big. So the title of this series is New Technology and the Future of Japan. So first of all, why does innovation matter? One of my favorite economists, Paul Krugman, says about innovation: productivity isn't everything, but in the long run, it's almost everything. So productivity is the basis of economic growth. So the output per head basically determines a lot. And why is that? A country's ability to improve its standard of living over time depends almost entirely on its ability to raise its output per worker. Most countries don't have extensive mineral wealth or oil reserves like Japan, and thus can't get rich by exporting them. So the only viable way for society to become wealthier, to improve the standard of living available to its people, is for their companies and workers to keep getting more output from the same number of inputs. Innovation is how this productivity growth happens. Well, this productivity idea, what Krugman is referring to, is the mainstream productivity idea. It's based on Solow, a Nobel Prize winner, which says there's a production function. We'll get back to that, but the production depends on the inputs, labor, and capital, and the way that they work together. And the only way that you can grow your income is to actually grow your productivity, and that will shift your income curve upward, and that will allow for more savings, more investment, and thereby growing your economy, even if you are in a mature state like Western society, United States, Europe, and also Japan. Basically, innovation is important because it it's the only way that we can actually make sure that we grow our input per head. So how can we improve our productivity? There are actually, when we think about innovation, we tend to think about technology, about what we were looking at last week, about internet technology, about the invention of steam engine, things like that, invention of the telephone. Those types of innovation are on everybody's mind when they talk about innovation. But there actually have been a number of innovations. So innovation is not only technology. There are more types of innovation. You have the like going back a long way, but the symbolic innovation. So we had the alphabet first. That enabled us to communicate, write things down, and transfer information from one person to the other. That was a big innovation. But today we have software code, software that enables you to interface with a computer. Instead of writing zeros and ones, we are now able to write software in a human, easy to understand, easy to grasp human nature. So that is an example of symbolic innovation. Domestication. That's also a very big innovation, actually. The domestication of wild animals and plants. Technological innovation. New organization.
What do you mean domestication?
Domestication. Basically, we were hunters before, hunters and gatherers, and the domestication allowed us to basically settle down and breeding, and but also basically holding cattle in one place, farming land. That allowed us to settle down and to work on the land and to specialize, because before that we were just moving around like Bedouins today. Technology is new organizations in combinations. Combinations is very important, and we will look a lot in depth of detail regarding the combinations and what that means. Institutionals, like for example methods, the double entry system in bookkeeping, just-in-time inventory, Kaizen. Organizational formats, like for example the corporation with its shareholders and its legal framework, forms of governance, and for example the constitution, product standards, ISO norm, all these things, they are also very important innovations that help us to sustain, for example, technological innovation. If innovation would not be rewarded and could easily be copied without giving any benefits to the innovator, then there would be maybe less innovation. So institutional innovation was necessary to support the technological innovation. Explanations, that's another innovation, and an important one is basically, how does the universe work? Newton, Darwin, Einstein, they came up with standard, with very fundamental principles that helped us to explain how the world works, and based on that we are now capable of coming up with a slew of new innovations based on those findings. So that actually also is very important type of innovation. So all these things need to work together. I would actually claim that probably the whole economic science is based on Newton, and the way that we were trying to make this into a science, but perhaps that's not really justified. Economics is not really a science. It's not a matter of physics, but we try to give the impression that economics is a science and is functions exactly like physics, like for example the invisible hand, where there's always a balance between supply and demand. Well, we know that is not actually the case, but it was Adam Smith made this theory popular, and it's now on everybody's mind. So we have this abstraction of and the idea that, okay, this is how the economy works, based on physical principles that we learned in physics, but is that really justified? Is that really a good approximation of how the economy really works? We'll get back to that later.
How do you categorize robotics or AI in this?
Technological.
Or technological?
Technological, yes.
How about biotechnology?
Biotechnology is also technology.
Okay.
Yeah, so basically we're focusing on the technological one. We're also going to focus on the institutional one, because I think those are the most important one, and perhaps on the symbolic one, when I want to drill down on blockchains. Blockchain technology. Yeah, it's a kind of code, a way of how we manipulate, store data. It's technology and symbolic. So they work together. Each type of invention facilitates and is facilitated by the other. So one doesn't go without the other. So they need each other. So it's very important that when you look at, for example, we need to develop more technology, that we also need to provide the framework and the conditions in which that technology can thrive. That's often forgotten, and it's also something that we need to consider when we look at the role of technology in Japan. So how well is Japan organized, for example, in terms of institutions, explanations? Well, we know, for example, we have been discussing about that before, about norms, about the product standards. How well does Japan fit its norms? How well does it play with the norms in the rest of the world? So phases of technological innovation.